This burned-out, ambushed car is tied to one of the most haunting unsolved cases in recent years: the disappearance of Crystal Anderson, a 30-year-old mother of four who vanished without a trace on August 20, 2022. What makes this case especially chilling isn't just that Crystal disappeared, but what investigators found days later. Her boyfriend's car was also discovered completely torched in a remote wooded area, more than 50 miles away from her home. The fire appeared intentional, a deliberate attempt to erase evidence. And yet, despite the burned vehicle, despite witnesses, despite mounting evidence, Crystal's body has never been found.
People get whatever sentencing they get, it still doesn't make the pain go away. To me, there's no complete justice. It's never going to bring Crystal back.
Before we talk about the night she vanished, we need to rewind, because Crystal's story didn't begin with a fire in the woods. It began years earlier with warning signs that too many people recognized, but no one could stop in time. Crystal Channel Anderson was born in 1991. She was the kind of person people remembered. She worked as a home health aide, spending her days caring for the elderly and vulnerable, then coming home to care for her four children who were the center of her world. According to her family, Crystal never went a single day without checking in. She called constantly. She reassured everyone that she was okay. And above all else, she made sure her children were safe, loved, and supported. On the surface, her life looked stable. Photos showed smiles. Social media painted a picture of normalcy. But behind closed doors, Crystal was living in fear. She was trapped in a volatile relationship with Tony Lee Berry, a 48-year-old man and the father of her youngest child, 7-year-old Serenity. According to Crystal's mother, Wanda Sumter, the relationship was defined by control, intimidation, and violence. This was not a partnership built on love or respect. It was one where power was unbalanced and Tony held it. Family members had warned Crystal for years. They saw the signs. The arguments that went too far. The fear in her voice. The emotional and physical toll the relationship was taking. And yet, like many victims of domestic violence, Crystal felt trapped, bound by shared children, financial pressure, and the psychological manipulation that often keeps victims from leaving. Still, she tried. Not long before her disappearance, Crystal made a major move toward independence. She relocated to Wagoner, South Carolina, settling into a home on Cyburn Road. To her family, this felt like hope. A fresh start. A chance to finally create a safe environment for herself and her kids. But experts will tell you this harsh truth. Leaving an abusive relationship is often the most dangerous time. Crystal's daily routine remained steady. She worked her shifts in scrubs, ran errands, checked in with family, and stayed deeply involved in her children's lives, helping with homework, attending school events, making plans for the future. Nothing about her behavior suggested she was planning to disappear. In fact, the opposite was true. Crystal was building a life. Then came the night of August 28, 2022. It started like any other evening. Crystal returned home from work, still wearing her scrubs, exhausted but focused on her kids. What happened next would become the last confirmed sighting of her alive. Witnesses, including one of her own children, reported a heated argument between Crystal and Tony Berry. The verbal fight quickly escalated. Voices rose. Tension exploded into violence. And then, in a moment that no child should ever witness, Tony Berry was seen forcing Crystal into the trunk of his 2007 Cadillac CTS. There were screams, struggling, panic, and then silence. Hours later, that same Cadillac was found abandoned in a wooded area in Newberry County, roughly 56 miles from Crystal's home. The car had been set on fire, completely destroyed. Investigators immediately believed the fire was meant to eliminate evidence. Phone records would later place Tony Berry near the location around the time the car was burning, leaving behind a digital trail he couldn't erase. But the most disturbing question remained unanswered. Where was Crystal Anderson? Despite extensive searches, interviews, and forensic analysis, her body has never been recovered. What remains is a case built on witness accounts, burned evidence, and a family left in limbo, mourning a woman they believe is gone, yet without the closure of bringing her home. Crystal's story is not just about disappearance. It's about ignored warnings, the dangers of domestic violence, and a system that often reacts only after it's too late. More than 3 years later, her children are growing up without their mother, and her family continues to wait, not just for justice but for answers. The days immediately following Crystal Anderson's disappearance would reveal a disturbing pattern of behavior. One that, in hindsight, painted a clear picture of something going terribly wrong. On August 21st, just one day after Crystal was last seen, she failed to pick up one of her children as planned. To most people that might seem like a small detail. But to Crystal's family, it was unthinkable. Crystal was not the kind of mother who forgot her children. She didn't miss pickups. She didn't disappear without explanation. Her kids were her life. That single missed commitment became the first undeniable red flag that this was not a voluntary disappearance. Her sister, Shadira, felt it immediately, that sinking gut-level certainty that something was wrong. By August 23, she took matters into her own hands and contacted Tony Berry directly. She demanded to know where her sister was. Berry's response only deepened the concern. He claimed he hadn't seen Crystal since 1 a.m. on August 20th. But that timeline didn't add up. Witnesses had placed Crystal with Berry hours later, during a violent confrontation that night. From the very beginning, Berry's version of events conflicted with what others had seen and heard. Shadira didn't wait for law enforcement to connect the dots. She went to Berry's home herself, searching for anything that might explain her sister's sudden disappearance. What she found there left her shaken. She discovered demonic candles with Crystal's name on them, and inside the bathroom, she noticed a rope sitting in the bathtub, an object that felt completely out of place. The house had an eerie, staged feeling, like someone had tried to clean or reset the scene but missed important details. To Shadira, it didn't feel like a home. It felt like the aftermath of something violent. If you're finding these stories meaningful or informative, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really helps us keep bringing you more content like this. The next day, on August 24, 2022, Crystal's mother, Wanda Sumter, officially reported her daughter missing to the Aiken County Sheriff's Office. Wanda made sure to tell investigators about the violent history between Crystal and Tony Berry, hoping that context would trigger immediate urgency. But instead of swift action, the family encountered something painfully familiar in cases like this: dismissal. Officers reportedly suggested that Crystal might have simply gone out partying, a statement that deeply frustrated and hurt her family. This response exposed a troubling pattern seen far too often, particularly in cases involving Black women and domestic violence victims. Rather than treating Crystal's disappearance as an emergency, law enforcement appeared slow to act, failing to immediately secure evidence or aggressively question the person last seen with her. That delay mattered. Those first few days after a disappearance are critical. They are when witnesses remember details most clearly, when physical evidence is freshest, when victims, if still alive, have the greatest chance of being found. The lack of urgency and media attention meant fewer eyes were looking for Crystal during the most important window of time. It would take a local reporter and a social media advocate weeks later to finally get Crystal's story in front of the public. By then, valuable time had already been lost. Behind the scenes, however, investigators were slowly piecing together a case. Cell phone records became a turning point. Data showed that Tony Berry's phone had pinged off towers near Newberry County, the same area where his burned Cadillac would later be discovered. These pings placed Berry near the scene at the exact time the vehicle was set on fire, directly contradicting any claim that he wasn't involved. But location data was only the beginning. Investigators uncovered a series of purchases Berry made around the time of Crystal's disappearance. Purchases that raised immediate alarm. He had bought a gas-powered auger, a shovel, pre-mixed fuel, plastic coveralls, gloves, trash bags, and plastic sheeting. These were not everyday household items. Together they painted a chilling picture. Tools consistent with digging, body disposal, and preventing forensic evidence transfer. Then came perhaps the most damning evidence of all, Berry's own internet searches. In the days surrounding Crystal's disappearance, he had searched phrases such as, "how to carry out this crime and leave no evidence," and "how to commit a murder and get away with it." These searches weren't vague or accidental. They showed intent, planning, and awareness. Despite all of this, it took more than a month. On September 28, 2022, Tony Berry was finally arrested at a hotel in Lexington County after a tip led police to his location. He was charged with kidnapping and held without bond. For Crystal's family, the arrest brought a mix of relief and heartbreak. Berry was behind bars, but Crystal was still missing. Then the case took another disturbing turn. Investigators arrested Darius Berry, Tony's 23-year-old son, charging him as an accessory after the fact to murder and arson. Authorities believed Darius had helped his father after the crime, allegedly picking him up near the burn site and assisting in destroying evidence by setting the car on fire. The timeline suggested coordination, not coincidence. But what happened next exposed serious cracks in the system.
Of an Aiken mother of 4 is still waiting for police to find the body a year after she disappeared. Crystal Anderson went missing back in August of last year. Her boyfriend at the time, Tony Berry, charged with kidnapping in September, and her in December.
Tony's son Darius was also charged in her death with accessory to murder after the fact in Aiken County. Investigators say the two of them burned a car that was part of evidence in the woods in Newberry County. But Aiken County authorities released Darius late last month because they did not have jurisdiction in that case.
Darius was initially held by Aiken County, but on December 19, 2022, those charges were dismissed. The reason? Jurisdiction. Aiken County realized the crimes tied to the burned vehicle occurred in Newberry County, not their own. Meanwhile, Newberry County did have a warrant for Darius, but it hadn't yet been entered into the system when Aiken County checked. Instead of a coordinated handoff between agencies, Darius was released. For more than a week, a man accused of helping cover up a murder walked free due to a breakdown in communication between law enforcement jurisdictions. It was a devastating mistake, one that only deepened the family's pain and raised serious questions about accountability.
I just feel like the system failed me. I feel like I don't know if we would have been able to save Crystal's life because I don't know how soon everything happened. But I do believe that we would have gotten closure a lot sooner.
For Crystal Anderson's loved ones, this case isn't just about what happened to her. It's about everything that went wrong afterward. The delays, the dismissals, the missed chances, and the haunting reality that while arrests have been made, Crystal herself has never been found. Her family continues to wait, not just for justice but for answers, closure, and the chance to finally bring her home. On December 13, 2022, nearly 4 months after Crystal Anderson vanished, investigators made a critical move. Tony Berry was formally charged with murder. For Crystal's family, the announcement brought a rush of conflicting emotions. On one hand, it was validation. Law enforcement finally acknowledged what they had feared all along. On the other, it came with a painful truth. Crystal's body had still not been found. And without a body, the road to justice would be steep, uncertain, and emotionally exhausting. This would be what's known as a no-body murder case, one of the hardest types of cases to prosecute. There was no physical remains to point to, no official cause of death, no crime scene in the traditional sense. Instead, prosecutors were forced to rely entirely on circumstantial evidence. Witness testimony, digital footprints, suspicious behavior, financial records, and Berry's own words and actions. The Aiken County Sheriff's Office intensified its search efforts. Multiple searches were conducted in Newberry County, focusing on rural, wooded areas where Berry's cell phone had pinged in the hours surrounding Crystal's disappearance. Cadaver dogs were brought in, trained to detect the scent of human remains even long after death. Each search raised hope, and each one ended in heartbreak. Crystal was still nowhere to be found. Then, on Mother's Day in May 2023, the family received news that reignited both hope and frustration. Investigators informed them that DNA had been recovered from the trunk of Tony Berry's burned Cadillac. Testing was underway to determine whether it belonged to Crystal. Her sister Shadira provided DNA samples. Later, their mother did the same, ensuring there would be a reference if remains were ever located. But here's the part that continues to haunt the family. As of late 2025, no definitive DNA results have been shared with them. 4 years, Crystal's loved ones have lived in agonizing limbo, knowing that evidence exists but not knowing what it confirms. Every unanswered update feels like another delay, another reminder that justice moves slowly, especially in cases like this. Still, this is not where hope ends. To understand why Crystal Anderson's case may still see justice, it's important to understand one critical truth. A body is not always required for accountability. Prosecutors across the country have successfully proven murder cases using strong circumstantial evidence alone. Cases built on behavior, digital trails, witness testimony, and patterns that leave little room for doubt. This is why there is still hope. Cases without recovered remains, often referred to as no-body prosecutions, are becoming increasingly successful. Since 2012, there have been hundreds of murder cases in the United States where no body was ever found, yet juries still return guilty verdicts. These cases succeed because prosecutors only move forward when the evidence is overwhelming, when every alternative explanation has been carefully dismantled. When you look at the evidence in Crystal Anderson's case, that same pattern is clearly present. Witnesses reported seeing Tony Berry force Crystal into the trunk of his car during a violent confrontation. That car was later discovered burned in a remote wooded area, suggesting an intentional attempt to destroy evidence. Investigators uncovered suspicious purchases, including tools commonly associated with digging and disposal. Barry's internet searches, asking how to commit murder without leaving evidence, revealed disturbing intent. Cell phone records placed him near the burn site at the critical time. And DNA was later discovered in the trunk of his vehicle. Taken together, these details form a comprehensive circumstantial case, the exact kind of evidence prosecutors rely on when pursuing murder charges without a recovered body. This is why Crystal's case still holds weight. This is why it hasn't gone cold. And this is why her family continues to believe justice is possible. But while the legal process moves slowly, time has already taken a devastating toll on Crystal's loved ones. Her 4 children, who should have been growing up together under their mother's care, are now separated, living in different homes with different fathers. Life has continued without her, but it has never been the same. Birthdays pass. School events happen. Milestones are reached. And Crystal is missing from every one of them. Justice, when it comes, won't undo that loss. But it can still mean something. And for Crystal Anderson, the story is not over yet. The deepest loss in this case belongs to the youngest child, 7-year-old Serenity. She lost her mother at an age when children should feel the safest, when the world is still supposed to make sense. Instead, Serenity was forced into a reality shaped by absence, confusion, and unanswered questions. Her grief is quiet, carried in moments most people never see. After Crystal disappeared, her sister Shadira Smothers stepped into a role she never imagined she would have to carry. She took Crystal's youngest daughter, Serenity, into her home, becoming far more than just an aunt. In an instant, Shadira became Serenity's protector, her emotional anchor, and the one person determined to make sure her mother's story would not be forgotten. For Shadira, August 20, 2022, is not just a date, it is a permanent scar. She says the events of that day are forever etched into her memory. That day changed my entire life, she said.
When they told me that the charges were dropped, she immediately followed and did tell me that Newberry would pick up the charge. They did not tell me that it was going to take so long to happen. I was expecting him to be arrested immediately. And I honestly believe that had they tackled everything and communicated with the other county at the very beginning, there's a possibility that we probably would have already found Crystal. Darius is the key to this case. He needs to be facing a severe punishment, not a slap on the wrist.
Shadira says she does not agree with Darius making bond in Newberry County.
They need to keep him because he knows. He knows, and they need to stay on him.
I can never forget that exact date. In the beginning, Shadira admits she struggled to accept the possibility that her sister's boyfriend, Tony Berry, could be involved. She also held on to hope that his son, Darius, might be innocent. My heart wanted to believe Darius just got caught up in something his father did, she explained. I thought maybe he really had nothing to do with it. But over time that hope began to unravel. I was misled the entire time, Shadira said quietly. Now, more than 2 years later, the weight of that realization still hasn't lifted. I never thought I'd be here 2 years later, she said. I never thought that would be the last time. Every family gathering carries a bittersweet pain. While they're grateful to see one another, the absence of Crystal hangs heavily over every moment, a reminder of who should be there but isn't. And through that pain, Shadira continues to plead for answers. If you know anything about her, please, she begged. I'm begging on behalf of her children. Every year since Crystal vanished, the family has gathered to honor her memory. They hold annual vigils at Drew Park, releasing balloons, lighting candles, and sharing stories about who Crystal was beyond the headlines. These gatherings are more than memorials. They serve a purpose. They keep Crystal's name in the public eye. They remind investigators and prosecutors that this case is still active, still watched, and still matters. For Shadira, grief has become fuel for change. She has transformed her pain into advocacy, speaking out not only for her sister, but for countless other missing women whose cases never receive proper attention. In October 2024, she spoke at John Jay College, highlighting the systemic biases that affect how cases involving women of color are handled by law enforcement and covered by the media. She is also in the process of launching the Abused and Bruised, the Crystal Anderson Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting victims of domestic violence and helping families recognize early warning signs before it's too late. As of January 2026, Tony Berry remains in jail without bond, awaiting trial on kidnapping and murder charges. Darius Berry, charged as an accessory, was later released on a $20,000 bond. Crystal's family believes Darius may hold critical information about where her body is located. His cooperation could be the key to finally bringing Crystal home. History shows that sometimes accessories choose truth over loyalty, especially when protecting themselves becomes more important than protecting someone else's secrets. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments, and click one of the videos on your screen to continue exploring stories that deserve to be told.